Have you ever noticed how the eagle carefully observes the direction of the wind before spreading its wings and gliding? This smooth and effective movement is what we call gliding, where it takes advantage of the air currents without making an excessive effort to fly. This is an example of positive adaptation to the environment. Now, let's talk about how negative changes can affect the chosen in a similar way, but with very different results. All kinds of vices and negative patterns that surround us are not simply present by chance. They are fed by evil altars that strengthen these negative influences. Evil altars are demonic patterns established over an individual's life, similar to a generational curse. These altars, once agreed upon, hold their victims in spiritual bondage until the alliance is broken. Just as the eagle needs air currents to glide, these negative patterns only remain because there are hidden forces that sustain them. All kinds of addictions and negative patterns that surround us are not simply present by chance. They are fed by these evil spiritual structures. Do you feel trapped in destructive habits? Do you notice repeated failures and barriers that seem insurmountable? These are signs that altars of evil may be strengthening these negativities in your life. By recognizing these signs, like the eagle adjusting its wings to the wind, you too can learn to take a stand against these negative currents and reclaim your freedom and spiritual power. If you, as one of the chosen ones, or your family, are constantly affected by mysterious illnesses and diseases that seem inexplicable and never-ending, this can be a clear indication of the presence of an evil altar. This constant battle against malaise not only affects the physical body, but also confirms the influence of negative spiritual forces operating in the lives of the chosen, whether it is admitted or not. Furthermore, these illnesses may be deliberately designed to limit the purpose and potential of the chosen. Mysterious illnesses and infirmities, whether faced individually by the chosen or manifested in family patterns, are often fueled by evil spiritual altars. These health problems often follow a hereditary pattern, indicating that in addition to medical factors, there is a deep spiritual influence perpetuating these conditions. This pattern of recurring illnesses stretching across generations is an alarming sign that dark spiritual forces are at work, not only affecting health, but also aiming to restrict the true potential and fulfillment of the mission of the chosen ones. These conditions persist and defy conventional medical solutions, suggesting that their roots run deeper than mere physical or genetic imbalances. This resistance to treatment reveals the physical manifestation of a spiritual problem, where evil altars have been erected, whether by conscious or unconscious practices, and continue to exert their destructive power over the chosen ones and their lineages. In addition, chronic illnesses can also be a sign that we need to change something in our lives, whether in the way we think, act, or relate to others. They show us that we need to seek a new balance and a new way of dealing with our difficulties. Recognizing and combating these altars is essential for the chosen ones, because by dismantling them, they can finally free themselves from the hereditary curses that have been imposed on them. There are souls who are deeply wounded and therefore become vulnerable to the influence of evil spirits. Problems such as self-pity, resentment, low self-esteem, mental confusion, and many others can be open doors for demons to enter. When this happens, casting them out can be insufficient if these doors remain open, as they will return. What needs to be done is inner healing work, helping the person to conquer the territory of their own emotions. For the chosen ones, the journey of healing is fundamental. Someone who doesn't love themselves, for example, won't have the motivation to resist the demons when they come. But when that person is healed and rediscovers their self-worth, they will find the strength to protect themselves. The same applies to those who are afflicted by self-pity or feelings of rejection. These people often allow evil spirits to manipulate them, seeking to attract the attention and compassion of others. However, when they are healed by the love of the community and the ministering of the Holy Spirit, they will no longer allow demons to use their lives to attract the attention of others. The chosen ones have a responsibility to seek inner healing, trusting in the power of the Holy Spirit and God's protection. In this way, they will be able to strengthen themselves and guard against evil influences, living in full freedom and purpose. The second sign of the influence of evil altars on the chosen manifests itself through sexual perversions. These are not merely matters of individual choices or moral failings, but immoral and destructive behaviors that are directly fed by evil spiritual altars. Regardless of the sincerity of the victims, these altars perpetuate all kinds of sexual perversions, creating a vicious cycle that is difficult to break without spiritual intervention. The cause of the presence of these altars is alarming. They feed all kinds of sexual and immoral perversions. This is why shocking and incomprehensible reports can emerge, such as a well-known adult getting inappropriately involved with minors or even babies. These acts make no sense in the light of human reason because they are rooted in spiritual influences that distort natural behavior. This dark reality is an indication that it's not just a lack of will or morals on the part of the people involved. There is a spiritual force operating with a legal basis granted by the established altars. The victims of these perversions often don't even understand what attracts them to such acts. This lack of understanding about one's own actions is a clear sign that the perversions are sustained by something beyond the physical and emotional sphere. In order for the chosen to free themselves from these spiritual bonds, it is crucial to recognize the presence and power of these altars. The fight against these negative influences requires more than simple personal resolve. It requires intense prayer, deep spiritual counseling, and the support of a faith community that understands the gravity of this spiritual battle. Breaking with these altars can restore purity, integrity, and allow the chosen to resume their path to fulfill their divine purpose, free from the distortions imposed by these evil forces. The third sign of the influence of evil altars on the chosen manifests itself in the form of depression and other mental health problems, where the origin of these issues often transcends commonly identified physical and emotional causes, such as fatigue or stress. These conditions are often exacerbated or even originate from negative spiritual influences that are hidden but powerfully destructive. A striking example in the Bible is the man from Gadara, who was described as living among the tombs, constantly hurting himself and screaming. This self-destructive behavior was directly driven by a legion of evil spirits that possessed him. His healing only took place when Jesus intervened directly, casting out these spirits and restoring his mental and physical sanity. This account illustrates not only the reality of evil spiritual forces, but also the possibility of complete deliverance through powerful divine intervention. Another biblical example is that of King Saul, who, after disobeying God's instructions, was afflicted by an evil spirit that left him deeply depressed and agitated. Saul only found temporary relief when David played his harp. This scenario highlights how a disturbed mental state can be influenced by a spiritual force, requiring more than human solutions, but a spiritual response. These examples underline a crucial truth. Many mental health problems, although they can be treated superficially with therapies and medication, need an approach that considers the spiritual roots of the problems. For the chosen who face these struggles, it is essential to recognize the possible influence of evil altars and to seek spiritual deliverance, which often includes prayer, fasting, and counseling with trained spiritual leaders. Through these means, true and lasting healing can be achieved, freeing oneself from the invisible chains that these spiritual forces impose. The fourth sign of the influence of evil altars on the chosen, witchcraft and idol worship, reveals how even the most devout Christians can be inadvertently drawn back into idolatrous practices. The Bible says that witchcraft and sorcery is a sin. We must not get involved with evil spirits or ask for their help. God cannot be controlled by spells. Witchcraft, also called sorcery, and which encompasses macumba, candomblé, and various other practices, is the use of the supernatural to manipulate people or events. It can involve invoking spirits, consulting the dead and casting spells, or doing works. When a person practices witchcraft, they are engaging with demons, often disguised as good spirits. It may seem harmless, but it's very dangerous because it's putting yourself under the power of the devil. There are no good demons. They all work for the devil, and their aim is to destroy. In witchcraft, a distinction is usually made between good magic and bad magic. But according to the Bible, there is no such thing as good magic. All magic is bad, because it is a wrong spiritual influence. God abhors all kinds of witchcraft. Surprisingly, many who sincerely love God find themselves in times of difficulty resorting to objects or rituals that have their roots in idolatrous traditions. For example, a small portrait in a village, passed down from great-grandfather to grandfather, which is said to bring results if spoken to. These practices, although they may seem harmless or merely symbolic, actually serve as spiritual altars that maintain the influence of idolatry. In the Bible, the fight against idolatry is a recurring theme. Idolatry can be defined as the worship or veneration of idols, images, or anything that is placed above God. Idolatry can take different forms and manifestations throughout history and in different cultures. In the Bible, we find examples of idolatry related to the worship of idols made of wood, stone, precious metals, and even false gods represented by animals. In addition, idolatry can also manifest itself through the worship of people, such as political leaders, celebrities, or even oneself. One of the main aspects of idolatry is the replacement of God with something or someone else. Idolatry occurs when we place anything above God in our lives, be it money, power, fame, worldly pleasures, or even our own desires and wants. By doing this, we are denying God's sovereignty and becoming slaves to our own ego. A clear example is King Saul, who, although initially devoted to God, went astray and consulted a medium, seeking spiritual guidance through practices condemned by God. This act of desperation not only demonstrated his spiritual weakness, but also how even God-appointed leaders can fall into the trap of idolatry and sorcery when they don't watch out, just as can happen to a chosen one. Another biblical example is that of Gideon, who after a divine victory against Israel's enemies, made an ephod that ended up becoming an object of worship for all of Israel, leading the people back into idolatry. This incident shows how even acts of faith can go astray and turn into idolatry if they are not carefully guarded. For Christians today, it's crucial to recognize and confront these spiritual highs, especially when the going gets tough. The pull to revisit practices and objects that represent idolatrous foundations can be strong, but victory over these influences is guaranteed for those who remain faithful to Christ's teachings. Confronting the existence of these altars, rather than ignoring them or minimizing their importance, is essential for complete liberation. This awareness must be an integral part of church teachings and practices, where leaders and members are encouraged to cleanse their lives of any traces of idolatry. Victory over witchcraft and idolatry is not only possible, it is a promise for those who dedicate themselves to living a life completely surrendered to Jesus Christ, rejecting any form of altar that does not glorify God. The fifth sign of the influence of evil altars on the chosen, manifested by stagnation and delays, can be deeply understood through the near-success syndrome. This pattern, where people start projects with great potential, but repeatedly fail to complete them, reflects a profound spiritual truth that is echoed in the scriptures. "And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." Victory over these obstacles is not achieved by avoiding reality, but by facing it and recognizing the truth about the presence of spiritual altars. In the Bible, we see clear examples of how the truth about spiritual influence needs to be recognized and confronted in order for progress to be made. A striking example is that of Moses leading the Israelites out of Egypt. Each time they came close to liberation, they faced new challenges that made them question God's promise. From the plague to the Red Sea, their journey was marked by several near misses until the truth that God was with them was fully accepted and faith was restored. Furthermore, the life of Nehemiah, who faced great opposition while rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem, exemplifies this near-success syndrome. Despite constant delays and attempts to dissuade him, Nehemiah did not abandon his enterprise, but faced the opposition with prayer and persistence, recognizing that spiritual forces were trying to prevent him from fulfilling his mission. These biblical accounts highlight the need for today's chosen ones to recognize the altars that may be causing stagnation in their lives. The truth is that these altars are often responsible for a frustrating cycle of beginnings without conclusions, whether in business, personal projects, or ministries. The ability to start something with enthusiasm, but the inability to complete it, suggests the presence of a spiritual influence that needs to be confronted. Identifying and dismantling these altars through prayer, fasting, and deliberate action is crucial. This involves not only recognizing the spiritual reality, but also taking concrete steps to break the cycle of stagnation. Like Moses and Nehemiah, the chosen must be equipped with truth and faith to transform the near-success syndrome into testimonies of successful conclusions and spiritual victories. The sixth sign of the influence of evil altars, which manifests itself through sterility and short-lived success, is often accompanied by barriers of all kinds, including biological ones. These barriers not only prevent lasting success, but create a cycle of frustration where moments of blessing are quickly followed by misfortune. This condition can be so severe that some people begin to expect misfortune as soon as something good happens, such as buying a car that soon gets into an accident, or being granted a visa, followed by unexplained legal problems. This recurring pattern suggests that it's not just bad luck or coincidence. For example, consider families where several generations face similar problems, such as difficulties in conceiving or maintaining a pregnancy to term. Some women report disturbing experiences, such as being visited by strange figures at night, which directly interferes with their ability to sustain a pregnancy. Furthermore, in the professional context, individuals can receive wonderful opportunities that unexpectedly fall apart. There are reports of people who, after obtaining a significant contract and even taking out loans to finance it, discover that there are flaws in their documents, which not only annuls the contract, but also leaves them in debt. This pattern of success followed by failure is a clear indication of a spiritual barrier that needs to be identified and tackled. These situations show how evil altars can affect people's lives in various spheres, confirming the need for in-depth spiritual intervention. To face such challenges, it is essential to recognize these patterns and seek deliverance through prayer, fasting, and spiritual guidance. As in Ephesians, we are reminded that our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Victory over these altars and barriers is possible, and with spiritual understanding and endurance, patterns of barrenness and short-lived success can be broken, allowing blessings to flow freely and sustainably into the lives of the chosen. In the context of the seventh sign of the influence of evil altars, which is negative repetitive patterns affecting generations, it is crucial to understand how participation in altars can affect not only the individual, but also those around them. Negative energetic patterns and repetition are the continuous cycles of behaviors, thoughts, or emotions that have an unfavorable impact on our life and well-being. These patterns are often external manifestations of limiting internal beliefs and can arise from past experiences, traumas, the internalization of social norms and family expectations, or the influence of these evil altars. They are energetic in the sense that they are imbalances from this subtle body and personal energy field, but they are also dynamic and impact on how we interact with the world and how the world responds to us. The biblical narrative of Jonah provides a powerful illustration of this reality. In Jonah, when Jonah was fleeing from his divine mission, he got into a boat, and all the passengers suffered the consequences of a storm caused by Jonah's disobedience. This episode highlights that when the realm of the spirit is against a person, it can also affect everything and everyone who supports them. On the other hand, Jesus' presence in the boat during a storm, as recounted in the Gospels, brought preservation and safety to those around him. Jesus' presence calmed the storm and protected everyone in the boat, demonstrating how spiritual influence can have beneficial or harmful effects depending on the nature of the altar involved. These biblical examples underline a profound truth. Altars do not operate in isolation. They can bring blessings or curses not only to the individual directly involved, but also to their family, friends, and even future generations. For example, when America's founders established the nation, they erected an altar and officially invoked the name of the Lord, an action that many believe still resonates with blessings on the nation today. In the same way, many of our ancestors, in moments of fear or despair, sought out well-known deities and established altars, which, although they themselves have passed away, continue to exert influence. Like Jacob, who found himself in a place where his grandfather, Abraham, had built an altar, we realize that these altars have lasting power and can operate no matter how much time passes. Thus, it is crucial for the chosen today to recognize these patterns and actively work to dismantle any evil altar that may be perpetuating cycles of poverty, failure, or other adversity. This involves both prayer and spiritual intervention, and a deep understanding of how these altars were established and how they can be overturned, ensuring that future generations are not harmed by the choices and circumstances of their ancestors. So, my friends, understand, demons work in the weak minds of people who commit a tragedy and don't know what they've done, because they're possessed. Evil altars distort good customs, denigrate what is right, destroy families, and work with deception. Many people are possessed and don't even know it. There are beggars imprisoned by Satan. Usually these people are educated, from good families, and suddenly they get into a sad situation, living on the street, going months without a shower, walking without direction, and this happens as a result of the devil's work in their lives. How can a person in their right mind go so long without bathing and enjoy living in filth? Jesus asked the boy's father, "How long has this been going on?" The father replied, "Since he was a child, the devil has thrown him into fire and water." There are people suffering from the consequences of the evil spirit at work in their lives. Have you ever noticed that beggars walk with their hands clenched, pick up cigarette butts on the ground, carry bags on their backs, and don't have a steady gaze? This happens because of some problem they've suffered, which has created gaps for an evil spirit to enter. Mysterious illnesses, sexual perversions, evil games, horror movies, witchcraft, idolatry, and negative patterns are all points of contact for altars of evil to enter and destroy lives. The devil doesn't appear with a tail and horns, he appears wearing cotton shoes. We need to know that there are struggles, oppression, and that the evil spirit needs a body. It can be a horse, a cat, etc. It just needs a body to hit someone. Therefore, the elect must always be vigilant, discerning the subtle traps of the enemy, and constantly seeking God's protection and wisdom. Only in this way will they be able to dismantle evil altars, break negative cycles, and ensure that future generations live free from the evil influences that have plagued their ancestors and prevented them from fulfilling their divine purposes. If you're still around, you're part of the loyal circle of wisdom seekers. Through your support, I can continue creating videos and passing on enlightening knowledge. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like it, and comment if this video resonated with you. Thank you for being part of this community. I wish you a life filled with abundance. May you receive abundant blessings today.